Buenos días. Peru. Gracias. Once more at Puma Punku on the Altiplano of Bolivia. And I'm standing right next to the famous H blocks, which you'll now see. And these are what I call the maker's marks. You see the double lintel, and then the single lintel. This repeats over and over again. And here, and there. But with this one, those marks are missing. So you see the precision of the angles here, surface here, here, but this one was never completed. See the rounded corners. This surface almost complete, this one not, this one complete. The red sandstone quarry, where these massive blocks came from, is 9 miles in that direction.
Archaeology is very expensive. Very, very expensive.
Yeah, and our governments don't spend much money on culture.
They should have spent more money in culture than on other things.
Right.
But I think it's not the time to prepare yet. Something different that I can. And I hope we're going to be able to see something more.
We will. I think each person will see with their look.
So the surfaces and the magnetism seem to have some relationship. Other people have measured the fact that the gray stone seems to have magnetite in it, but it's not, the magnetism isn't constant or isn't continuous, as in the way it would have been laid down as a volcanic stone. There seems to be a relationship between the surfaces and the angles and the magnetism, which is very mysterious.
I wondered if all that thing where they talk about the pyramid being a bit power plant and whatnot,
Yeah.
if you could go, okay, power plant has some kind of error and an explosion, but those power plants are sort of tied in globally.
Mm-hmm.
So one goes off and then sets the others off in this worldwide cataclysm or whatever and causes all this destruction, maybe.
Yeah, I think so. That's why I wrote my book, Aftershock, about it. So the site has been used as a quarry probably for about 1,000 years, ever since the decline or demise of the Tiwanaku culture It's also obvious that the Tiwanaku people arrived here about 2,000 years ago and recycled some of the stone to create their own buildings. They didn't obviously shape this stone. This was done with lost ancient high technology, very advanced. In fact, probably more advanced than what we have today, which is the great mystery. What culture, more than 2,000 years ago, could have done this kind of work? Because the Tiwanaku had bronze tools. They couldn't have done it. The stone is very hard. The quarry for the red sandstone, again, 9 miles that way. The quarry for the gray andesite, 45 miles that way. Multi-ton blocks. More than 100 tons here. Over in Tiwanaku, 20, 30, 40 tons. That's what makes Puma Punku one of the most mysterious places on Earth, and why I keep coming back. The stones were not found where they presently are. Typical of archaeology, they excavate, they find, and then they line them up. And by doing so, they destroy what the original complex would have looked like. And therefore, there's no way to put Puma Punku back together again. And these massive foundation blocks, they could be in their original position, but one of them there, you can see it's still partially buried in the ground. So what cataclysm would have caused all of this original destruction prior to it becoming a quarry for the Spanish in the 1600s, all the way up until the 20th century.
I believe before the Great Flood here that the world is interconnected as we almost see today.
Look at the size of these massive blocks.
Okay, where we go?
We're going to see how is the curve, the flat curve.
Let's do it.
As you can see, the excavation here only goes down about 2 feet, maybe 3 feet. But what is underneath it? Why don't the archaeologists dig deeper? Author Antonio Portugal came here in the 1990s with ground-penetrating radar, and they found that there are chambers underneath the surface of Puma Punku. But the archaeologists refuse to admit that, and the government will not allow there to be any more digging deeper. Why? Because they're trying to protect their story of the history of Puma Punku, when in fact the history is much older and much more complicated than what we've been led to believe. Unfortunately, you can't see, but the Puma Punku complex is off north, south, east, and west by, it looks like something like 17 degrees, which is odd. Even relatively primitive cultures know how to align almost perfectly to north, south, east, and west. So the fact that the so-called pyramid of Puma Punku is off by 18 degrees and possibly more is curious. Could mean that it was built prior to the cataclysm of 12,000 years ago, and then the alteration in the axis of the Earth would have caused the site to twist like this to its present off north, south, east, west condition. Here we have stone protruding out from the excavation. And what's also curious is here, because this top layer of stone is the andesite, which reacts to the teslameter, and the lower levels are the red sandstone that do not react to the teslameter. So that to me would tend to indicate that this band of gray andesite stone that used to go all the way around the perimeter of this pyramidal structure could have been an energetic layer. It could have made the energy inside different from that on the outside. This whole area was also only recently excavated. So, say 30 years ago, the soil level went all the way to here, bearing it. How many thousands of years would it take for the soil to build up to that level? Or was the site hit by a massive wall of mud from Lake Titicaca, which is only 8 miles away, during a cataclysmic period several thousand years ago? Also, these stones were cut with great precision. There is no clay or mortar or concrete or cement or anything in between the joints. They still, after thousands of years, fit quite well together. So, function of the staircase, why is it here? Because 12,000 years ago, the water level of Lake Titicaca would have been right here. This would have been the shore of Lake Titicaca. It's a rise of about 100 feet from the plains in the background, and that has been proven by geologists and other scientists. Because 12,000 years ago, Lake Titicaca was 10 times the size it is now. So now we're in the village of Tiwanaku, and this stone is taken from Puma Punku and Tiwanaku to build the foundations of houses, likely starting in the 16th century by the Spanish, as well as this archway. And the entire Iglesia de Tiwanaku, or the Tiwanaku Church, was all basically recycled material from Tiwanaku and Puma Punku. So it's not a unique situation because, of course, in Egypt you had the Greeks arriving, possibly destroying parts of the ancient Egyptian structures, and then the Romans came, and then the Muslims came and built their buildings out of the material that they found there. So we don't really know how much of Puma Punku was actually moved in order to build constructions here, but there's plenty of evidence that much of the foundation of the little town of Tiwanaku was constructed from the material of Puma Punku and Tiwanaku. And as a special treat, we're going to see what some people in this little town of Tiwanaku found when they were digging foundations for their homes.
Oh. 50 years ago, the owners of this house tried to build a new house, and they decided to make holes inside to put their houses up. And you know what did they find under this beautiful monolithic? And we keep it here because it's better than the museum. The people from this side are taking care better from this monolith than the museum. Please get closer to them.
In every courtyard in this little town, there are likely ancient stones from Puma Punku, either used as foundation blocks, or in this case, the entire statue was found buried underground. This is Tiwanaku in Bolivia.
Welcome to my friends from the United States and from Australia. Welcome to Tijuana. We got a new site, a modern one. I want to explain to you about this pyramid, which one is called Acapana. The size of this pyramid is 134 by 128 meters long and wide. It measures 20 meters up and got 7 terraces. The upper part is very interesting. It used to have a lake, a small lake, where our masters from the past used to just watch the lake to see the stars. Since long time ago, we're trying to rebuild all this pyramid, but it will take maybe 50 more years until we got it finished. When we get in the top, I will show you a tunnel and what that means of that tunnel. So we're going to keep going to the top of the pyramid.
Okay, we're on top of the Acapana pyramid, and there you see excavation. And what we're going to actually see is that the archaeologists removed somewhere between 6 and 10 feet of clay soil to reveal the stone structure underneath. Conventional archaeology says that this structure is 1,000 to maybe 1,500 years old, but there's no way that by natural deposition you would get 6 to 10 feet of clay soil deposit in that time period. It's more likely that this was a victim of an ancient catastrophic event of a wall of water and mud coming from Lake Titicaca and burying the structure many, many thousands, possibly 12,000 years ago. So again, you can see the amount of material, as in soil, that was removed.
This work wasn't too long ago. No? Was buried for so many years. Now we can tell how big it is.
So two almost identical stones. the surface of this one is fresh and this one eroded. So the one on the right was lying face up, exposed to the weather for thousands of years. The one on the left was lying face down, and that's what protected this beautifully flat surface. What's intriguing is that the Chicana shape here is unfinished. So some tool of some kind, almost like sandblasting, went in and cut out the Chicana shape, but it was never finished. The surface was, but these should be very crisp 90-degree angles. So this is an unfinished example here at Tiwanaku and shows us that likely advanced technology would have been used to shape it. So what caused this stone to snap in half? Likely not the Spanish, more probably a cataclysm. Oh, here it is. 37% copper.
How much?
37%. And here we have the bearded god, or ancient teacher, called Wiracocha. And this is called the subterranean temple, for obvious reasons. But its initial construction may have been for something more pragmatic, like water catchment, for example, since rain here on the Altiplano at 13,000 feet tends to be sporadic. Final destination is the Gate of the Sun, or Puerta del Sol, the most famous thing at Tiwanaku, but not the only one that as you could clearly have seen in all the video prior to this. Again, we go from primitive Inca to Inca rebuilding to megalithic. Then the transition back to Inca again. So polygonal shapes. Here you go from classic Inca Then here the Inca found a damaged superior wall that had been broken, so they simply took the stone and packed it back in, and then the original is here.
These ones are more, at an angle. The edges are in.
And the other giveaway is, again, you notice that all the stone is of an equal, like it all came from the same quarries, from a green limestone or a green granite quarry. But when you look up here, then you have smaller basalt blocks. So this is probably an example of the Inca trying to aesthetically make the wall look as good as that, but they couldn't do it, and they weren't able to go to the quarry, which is up on top of the mountain there, and cut blocks, big blocks like this up. So they simply scavenged from another building and then filled it in. And here again, you see the upper stuff is different. You go from granite to basalt. You go from large to small. And also the way that you see the way the wall is way off, how it bulges, right there. That's probably again a massive earthquake that came threw all of this material down and then shifted it. But it fits together so well, the wall didn't fall down, but it had to reestablish itself.
Little rock here in between. Why they put it like this square? We are going to show this kind of finest architecture, which is well tied each other, no, it's interlocked, no, joined, very well joined. That tells the differences between big rocks, boulders, and the type of material is green granite. But the stone over there, those are limestone, green granite. And we are gonna see darker granite later, and at Machu Picchu, white granite, different materials. So these Incas, they make sure to use solid and harder type of rocks because the construction should last almost forever, but at least for many generations.
Yeah, I saw where he was.
Right up above it.
It goes down. Or maybe it's my vantage.
So here again, if you look at the workmanship, you can see the front looks really good, but then it splays as it goes out.
Yeah.
So that's the Inca trying to make this
Good
look
copy.
like that. And if the wall hadn't been destroyed, you couldn't tell. It's like, oh, that's the same as us. But also these are the Inca tool marks. That's like a hammer doing the finishing work after 500 years, whereas that doesn't. Those don't have tool marks. So when the Spanish got here, they stucco coated the entire surface. That's what they made. And in 1950 there was an earthquake and the church fell down, revealing the stone for the first time in 500 years. So the mayor of Cusco told the head of the church that if you want to rebuild your church, you have to clean all of these circles, and that exposed this for the first time. So this is the most finely done stone area in all of the Americas. Nothing compares. This is the finest example of craftsmanship. And one of the weird things is you notice that the roof line goes in towards the inside of the building, which doesn't make any sense. So it's quite possible that this never actually had a roof.
Observen qué tenemos acá. A ver, grupo, ¿qué estamos acá? Es una pieza minúscula. Es una pieza minúscula, así como hay edificación megalithic.
The idea how culture look like. What we would see from what's the second.
So we had a group of dowsers here, like people who were really good at it. Every time they crossed one of these lines, the rods moved in. And then every time they walked past it, the rods moved back out.
Huh.
So they also measured that this is the center of the energy. So the energy is still working. It's actually pulsing in and out of the center because Cusco is the center of the Inca world. The Coricancha is the center of Cusco, and this is the center of the Coricancha. So it's an energetic thing that the Inca actually understood because they divided the sectors of their world up into along these lines called seques, which we'll see there's a drawing of what that was. So I think they were able to sense that this was energetic in some, like spiritually energetic or something.
Yeah.
But I think in original times it was some kind of facility.
Yeah, like a practical facility.
Lo cual pues nos va a mostrar realmente interesante. Les había comentado de que todas estas estructuras están cubiertas.
So you follow this line, and it goes around the corner, and then around the corner, and then around the corner, all the way to there. So that's a three-dimensional piece. locking into the rest of it.
So this is basically, this is a map of the Cusco area. So you see the center is no, the center is Cusco. The center of Cusco is the Coricancha. The center of the Coricancha is where that tub was that we saw. So compared to most cultures that will have borders between one country and another country based on a river or mountain range or something, this is based on energy lines. So that's why the Inca world is called the Tahuantinsuyu, which means the four quarters of the world. So the Inca world was divided into these four quarters, and these Seke lines radiate out from them. So it's just something that's kind of different.
And each black spot is like they have one waka, like ancient stones or sacred stones. That's the way they will know how to get to this.
Mañana me vas a...
We should bring you.
Well, to me, that looks like they set these two there and then stored it.
So in 500 years, with no evolution of tool technology, you do not go from this to that. It tells you.
What's interesting is that we've been talking about those knobs all day,
Yeah,
and they're up there, a few here and up there, but the rest of it they're without.
yeah. So then again, it's pretty obvious here that you have the original wall here, and then part of it fell down, probably during the cataclysm. So the Inca took the stone, put it into place, used clay as mortar to put it together, ran out of material, and then got the local limestone or andesite and built on top. And then you have Spanish on top of that. This is our first site, and it is called Kenko. Kenko is an Inca term which means zigzag because there is a zigzag carving in the surface.
It's a massive outcrop of limestone, which means that it was originally part of the ancient ocean. And as you can see, there are many cut surfaces all over it. Now, some archaeologists believe that it was a quarry of some kind, but there's no regular pattern. So how they can come up with a term like that, quarry, is unknown. To be honest, nobody knows how old these cut surfaces are, and nobody knows also who did the work, because the Inca had bronze tools, so they could possibly have done some of this work, but the weathering indicates that the surfaces are thousands of years older than the Inca culture, and therefore we don't know, in fact, who made this work. It is quite possible that it's much, much older than the Inca, and that the Inca found this site as well as the nearby city of Cusco in ruins. They adopted Cusco and sites like this and turned them into what are called huacas, which means sacred site. And it could very well be that they decided that this and others were sacred sites because of all of the complex stone carving that had been done a long, long time ago. Now, Kenko is quite close to another famous site called Sacsayhuaman, and that is in fact what we have here. This is Sacsayhuaman. And people, the term itself is actually a corruption by the Spanish. The original name could very well have been Sacsayhuaman or Sacsayhuaman, which could mean the place where the heart and the head unite or join, meaning that it again was a very important religious space. Or it could mean the head of the puma, because the city of Cusco was formed in the shape of a giant puma. Now, it again is a megalithic work, much of it predating the Inca time. You can see the zigzag wall in the background, which is incredibly massive. Some of the stones there weigh as much as 120 tons, were brought from a quarry some 3 miles away, and there is no way that the Inca themselves could have moved, shaped, and put into place these stones. They even told the Spanish when they arrived that this was not their construction, that this was there when they got there. So Sacsayhuaman, one of the largest megalithic sites on the planet, as viewed by my quadcopter called Pachacutec, which I used to take all of this video. And here, a final view of Sacsayhuaman or Sacsayhuaman with the city of Cusco in the background. Then we move to another nearby site, part of the Sacsayhuaman complex called Amaru Machai, which means the cave of the serpent. It again is a massive outcrop of limestone that has been shaped, not just the outcrop itself, but many, many other stone surfaces in the area. It covers hundreds of hectares or several hundred acres. A massive complex, heavily eroded, and much, much older than the Inca culture. This is just a small example of one of the cut surfaces here. There are estimated to be thousands of them in the area. And here we go with another flyby. The road you see in the background is in fact the Inca Trail, and that trail still goes from the city of Cusco south to the middle of Chile and Argentina. And here we send quadcopter Pachacutec up so you can see some of the surfaces. Here is the side of the outcrop where the two caves are. There actually are two caves. One is the cave of the moon and the other the cave of the sun. And those are Inca constructions in the foreground, but the actual stone carving of these surfaces here is likely much, much older than the Inca. We now move into the Sacred Valley of Peru to a very small ancient site called Chikong, which is in a side valley. And it's not that intriguing a site, but you can see there is some polygonal work here, and then also mud brick, and then rough work. It could have been an ancient ritual place. And also in the Sacred Valley, we have this little place which is called Waka Amaru, which means the sacred place of the serpent or the snake. Very few tourists ever see this place. Not super significant historically, and has some very rough construction as well as the quite beautifully carved snake symbol. This is an Inca construction that you're looking at there. It's likely that all of the work here was done by the Inca, whereas some of the more major sites we find much older megalithic work, and then the adoption or inheritance by the Inca, and then their own constructions as well. And here, our next location, which is Calca. Calca is also in the Sacred Valley of Peru, and this is a massive Inca work or construction of terracing. Truly astonishing. It's not known if this was originally a natural hill that the Inca then altered, or whether they built it from the valley floor and created these massive terraces which are 10 to 12 feet high. The total land surface here is very immense, and they could have grown many, many different crops and great abundance. The Sacred Valley, the climate basically is springtime year-round, and therefore you can grow food here 12 months of the year, more or less. So again, a magnificent work by the Inca culture. And also, terraces of this scale tend to be royal Inca, meaning that the produce that was made here was for the consumption of the royal Inca family themselves. The Inca civilization was led by a royal family of people. Not everyone who lived in the Inca world was called an Inca. It was the 1,000 or fewer people who had the royal bloodline that were designated as actual Inca people. Sacred Valley is more than 100 kilometers or 60 miles in length and produces an astonishing amount of food to this very day. And now we're at one of the truly megalithic places. This is Ollantaytambo. All of these are terraces that were constructed during the Inca times, but we find much older megalithic works here as well. Really astonishing constructions, which you can start to see, or you could see on the right. But as we go across and see the Inca work here, huge terracing system, very large terraces, so for the royal Inca family themselves, more or less. And this was one of the last refuges for the Inca people when the Spanish conquered Cusco and the Inca world. So as we start to go up here, up through these Inca terraces, we'll find that there are megalithic works actually on top, which is quite curious, because quite often the megalithic older work is on the bottom. But you see the difference in the construction technique on the right and here. You see the big polygonal works with the town of Ollantaytambo in the background. And then here, the actual megalithic works. As the quadcopter zooms down, you see these 6 huge blocks of granite. As we come in from the side view here, again, you see a crude Inca wall in the foreground. And then on the left, stones weighing 60 plus tons that were quarried from a mountain in the distance. Definitely pre-Inca work. And once again, we zoom in. If you traveled down through the Sacred Valley this way to the north, you would reach the famous Machu Picchu. But again, the comparison between the megalithic construction and the cruder and later Inca work. And another view, you see the size of these massive blocks. And it looks like they were destroyed by some kind of cataclysm. Next, we are now south of Cusco at Inti Punku. Inti is sun and Punku is gate, so the gate of the sun. This again is a combination construction. Part of it was done by the Inca and part of it is older megalithic. And the difference will be quite obvious as we turn the quadcopter around and then start heading past. You'll notice the large megalithic blocks on the left-hand side, and on top of that, the Inca built their works. 1 hour's drive in this direction is the ancient city of Cusco. Now here we have an above view. You see that channel? That is a water channel created by the Inca. And a quicker zooming in shot, again you see the difference between the Inca work on the left and the megalithic in the foreground with Inca work on top of it. And here again a view of the water channel and the Inca work, and then the megalithic work below, the foundation of the later Inca construction. And one final view, I believe, or maybe one of two final ones. Again, showing you the channel. And a zoom back to show you what is left of the entire complex. These gates were actually the official entrances into the sacred city of Cusco during Inca times. Our next location, not visited too often, is called Kiarumiok, which means the stones of the moon. Again, it's quite likely that some of this work was done before Inca times, though the majority is Inca. You see the interesting shape of a semicircle, which some people, such as engineer Arlen Andrews, believe is a solar clock of some kind. It's the only one of its kind in the entire area. And here again, a better view of the so-called solar clock, carved into a harder stone. I believe this is andesite and not limestone. And here a view from above. You see it's almost a perfectly shaped semicircle, and shadows are cast by the sun, so it could in fact have been some kind of solar clock. And flying over one more time, you see the uniqueness of that semicircular shape. It does basically face east, which makes sense in terms of being a solar clock. And then we come down to give you a view of the faceting aspects on it. Again, not many tourists visit this place. It is in fact quite a large site, and we're going to now explore some of the Inca work located above where the semicircled solar clock is located. Polygonal work, likely Inca, and then a sunken courtyard of some kind, and viewing part of this site. It's actually quite massive. It's larger than this. It goes up to the top of the nearby mountains. But we were too lazy to go and see all of it. However, this gives you an idea that there's far more to ancient Peru and Cusco than just Machu Picchu. We're now moving to the coast of Peru, and this location is near the town of Paracas. It's called Chongos. It's a cemetery, very ancient cemetery with small pyramid-like structures. The cemetery was in use from likely 500 BC until the fall of the Inca at around 1500 AD. So it was used by ancient people for at least 2,000 years. You can see basically no plant life can exist here whatsoever. It's one of the most extreme desert areas on the planet, the northern extension of the Atacama Desert in Chile. But where there is water, there is life. So there is underground water that travels from the Andes in the area of the highlands of Peru around Cusco, and these underground streams are accessed so as to be able to have water for the agriculture. But anything higher than the water table, like this pyramidal structure, can't even grow a cactus. Zooming back, having a look again at the pyramidal structure, of which there are many in the area. Our next location is Palpa, which is near Nazca in Peru, south of Paracas. And again, this is the northern extension of the Atacama Desert, where there's no water, there is no life whatsoever. And this is where we find hundreds, if not more than 1,000, geoglyphs. The Nazca ones are famous, the Palpa ones are not very famous, but equally as significant. And here the quadcopter is slowly approaching some. There are, as I said, about 1,000 in the area, and you can see they're quite whimsical characters made by the Paracas people. And our next location is Nazca itself. And these are the Puquio wells that most people or visitors never see. Again, they capture the water that is traveling underground. And they are spirals, almost like a staircase, so as to be able to access the fresh water. There was once a huge system of these Puquio wells. Now there are possibly 15 or 20 that have been repaired, but they would have been in many locations in the Nazca area. Again, access points for water, and also the importance of the underground streams, because there's no surface water and no rain, or maybe an inch of rain per year in the area, that they were vital for the survival of the people. It could be that these were made by the Nazca, but they could have also been made by the Paracas, who existed before Nazca times. And now we're near Lake Titicaca, and this is called Amaru Muru. It's an outcropping of red sandstone, so it's high in iron oxide content, and people believe that it's an energetic place, a place of communing with higher levels of consciousness possibly, but no one knows actually who made it. The Spanish, of course, called it the Devil's Doorway, but it's believed by some mystic people that you can communicate again with other energies, you can possibly communicate with other ancient sacred sites utilizing this portal. Some archaeologists claim that the Inca constructed this, but it's the only one of its kind. So no one, even the local people, knows who originally did the construction work here. And it's only about a mile physically from Lake Titicaca. 12,000 years ago, Lake Titicaca was about 100 feet higher in lake level than it is now. So the water would have been lapping, or the shore would have been lapping right where this man is standing. You see he's taking the position of one of those wishing to use this as a communication device. So this large outcrop is quite unique to the area. And again, nearby is Lake Titicaca. So Amaru Muru. Still at Lake Titicaca, this is Huaca Amaru, that almost nobody outside the local area has ever seen. The official name is Santiago de Oje, which is a Spanish term, and since the Spanish did not construct it, I refuse to call it that. So Huaca Serpiente or Huaca Amaru is what the place should be named. No one knows for sure what culture constructed it. It appears as if it was buried, possibly by some kind of cataclysm. Some of the stone was removed to build local houses, but the local people estimate that it is approximately 2,000 years old, or at least 1,000 years old. It was a temple dedicated to some kind of serpent deity, and was only excavated about 5 years ago. So very little is known about it, very little archaeological work has been done to it, and there could be other significant sites, and in fact there are in the area, including an underwater pier and possibly some underwater constructions. So here the quadcopter is coming down on the main site that has been excavated, and then goes back up again, so you can get a picture of the actual small excavation. And now Tiwanaku, one of the mega sites located in Bolivia, the most famous of all of Bolivia's ancient sites, thought by conventional archaeology to have been constructed by the so-called Tiwanaku civilization from 100 AD to about 900 AD, but it in fact has some megalithic elements, and so therefore could be far, far older. It's also been very badly damaged, and these walls, for example, were completely reconstructed. Only the standing stones are original. All of the fill work was done by archaeologists in the 1980s, simply scavenging the stone from all over the location and not properly putting the place back together. This is called the Acapana Pyramid. It originally had 7 tiered levels, and it looks like it was covered over by some great cataclysm in the distant past, which is the subject of my book Aftershock, where I look at sites in Peru, Bolivia, Egypt, and Lebanon that show evidence that they were destroyed by an ancient cataclysmic event, all possibly at the same time, approximately 12,000 years ago. Tiwanaku is quite vast. It's about 2 hours drive from the capital city of La Paz, and is well worth visiting if you're in Bolivia. In fact, some people simply go to Bolivia only to see Tiwanaku. But there are other ancient sites in the area as well. This shows you the flatness of the Altiplano area, and here is a close-up examination of the archaeological work that has been done at the Acapana Pyramid itself, or more technically proper pyramidal structure. Again, 7 levels. You see, in some cases the stone is quite tightly fitting, and in other cases it's kind of looks obviously rebuilt, and they had to dig over 8 feet of mud from these levels in order to find what the tiers looked like. And then this is the main and most famous part of Tiwanaku. That is the Gate of the Sun. It is one piece of granite-like or diorite-like stone. The quarry for it, and it weighs about 10 tons, is 70 kilometers or about 45 miles away. And also the gate is broken in half. That was not done recently or in historic times. That could have been the result of this massive cataclysm. And one final fly past the Gate of the Sun. And here you see it in more detail. As Gary, who's operating the quadcopter, and was much better in the beginning than I was, shows us different angles. You see the massive crack. You see lichen growing in that crack. A lot of weathering in that crack showing deep antiquity as to when it was broken. Our second to last site is Puma Punku. Puma Punku is part of the Tiwanaku complex, though it has a separate fence around it. Of course, it has been devastated by more than 1,000 years of destruction, starting possibly with the Aymara people, and then followed by the Spanish colonialists, and even up until recently, stones have been taken for use in construction in other buildings, which is a very sad event. That's simply the case. No one knows how big Puma Punku originally was. Some people think that 90% of it has been removed, but I personally believe that most of the stones are still here because they're of such strange and irregular shape that they would not be very useful in terms of modern or European style construction. And again, there's evidence that the whole site was devastated by a cataclysmic event, possibly a wall of mud that covered the entire area. And that's why whenever you dig, or wherever you dig at Puma Punku, you find stone artifacts that look like they have been machined. It's estimated by some engineers who have visited the location that some of the stone cutting technology would be very difficult for us in the 21st century to do. So how could a Bronze Age culture like the Tiwanaku have possibly achieved this? It is one of the most enigmatic places on the planet. And finally, in the high jungle of Bolivia, we have Samaipata. And Samaipata means the high flat place. So it could have been named that by the Inca because they have constructions here, but this is highly unlikely to be Inca work that you're looking at. This is the top of the mountain, it's red sandstone, and the entire surface has been carved. The archaeologists believe that it was some obscure and forgotten culture from the Amazon jungle that did this work. But you would need something beyond Bronze Age technology to be able to do all of this cutting and carving. And there's little evidence that people in the Amazon in pre-colonial times had bronze tools, because bronze tends to be found in this area of the world in the Andes Mountains. And so again, we see extreme weathering on the surfaces, and no one knows what culture created this or when. I believe it is several thousand years old and looks honestly quite similar to some of the work that we find in Ollantaytambo in the Sacred Valley of Peru. And I'm referring to the megalithic works there, not the Inca work. Not that many tourists visit Samaipata, mainly Bolivians, but it's not very well known to the outside world. very worth a visit. If you happen to be in Bolivia, you simply fly 1 hour from La Paz to the city of Santa Cruz, and then from there it's a 3-hour drive through and up into the high jungle to reach the mountaintop town called Samaipata. And it's a place of great mystery, and any place that I find enigmatic is one that I tend to go and visit several times, and this is definitely one of them.